1. I used to live in a horrible apartment. It was a small, one-bedroom, one-bathroom apartment. My hair is really distinct. It's an auburn-chestnut mix. It's mostly red with some copper, brown, and even a little blonde. Anyways, so I was at work. I used to work at a McDonald's. Anyways, today had been a long day for me. I really wasn't happy. A tall, plump man with brown hair and blue eyes was next. He was wearing a hat and a red t-shirt. "Hi, my name is Cheesy Wheezy. How may I help you, sir?" I ask. "Only you can help me, Cheesy Wheezy." "I want you," he says flatly. Sir, I am not food. Please take something off of the menu," I say. He sighs. "I'll see you next time, Cheesy Wheezy," he mutters. As he leaves, he winks at me. I watch as he got in a big white truck. When I got home, there was a note taped to my door. I picked it up. "Dear Cheesy Wheezy, I'll be over." I sighed and walked into my apartment. I was tired and hungry. I ate some mac and cheese and went to go sleep. Before I could lay down, I heard a knock on the door. I got up and answered. There was the guy I'd seen at work. I must have looked shocked because he said, "Hey, Cheesy Wheezy, I told you I was coming over. Did you get my note?" Before I could answer, he walked into my apartment. "This is small," he comments. "Get out," I scream. He sighs, then he left. Okay, I'll update in another story if anything happens. I doubt if anything will because it's been 1 year. Peace. 2. This happened when I was 16. I'm 29 now. I lived in Las Vegas. If anyone is from Vegas, then you will know the area around Sunrise Mountain isn't the best. Back then, I lived on Sarah and Nellis. It is worse than it was back then, but not a super great part town. I had a best friend with the same name as me. We will call us Becky. The only difference in our name was the spelling. Although it's not relevant to the story, we would have had the same middle name as well if her middle name had one more letter in it. Of course, I won't tell you what they are. Our moms also had the same name spelled differently. But her mom went by a shortened version of the name and my mom didn't. But it is interesting nonetheless. It's part of the reason we bonded so fast. It was an odd coincidence. I lived with my mom and stepdad. My stepdad, Dan, was a protective type. In my teenage years, I thought he was way too overprotective. Now that I have kids of my own, I know that he wasn't. One day, I wanted to meet Becky at a Target so that we could walk to my house together. The reason for this was because she lived about 1.5 miles from it. And I can't remember how far it was from my apartment, but I'm guessing about 1 mile. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'd love to know how many people know this area of town. We figured that it would be safer if we walked part of the way together than for her to walk all the way to my house alone, since our parents didn't want to drive us. I knew my stepdad wouldn't let me walk, so I asked my mom if I could behind Dan's back. More like begged. She was very reluctant, and I'm surprised she ever agreed. She has always supported his decisions and backed him 90% of the time. I found that annoying, but I understand why, now that I'm a mom. All I had to do to convince her was pretend to make my lip quiver, and she would laugh and allow me to get away with a lot back then. I think it's worth mentioning that I was about 5'4" and 115 pounds. I think the name gives away the fact that I'm a girl. I only have one sibling, a sister, who no longer lived at home. So, since I was the baby, my mom was lenient, that is, when Dan wasn't around. So I call up Becky and tell her my mom said I can go and that we'd better head out before she changes her mind. We wanted to spend more time together since we went to different schools and we only got to see each other weekends and summer for the most part. That seems like a lot now, but as a teenage girl, daily is almost not enough time with friends. So Becky and I head out at the same time. I start heading down Nellis, or Sahara, I can't remember which one goes to Target. From what I remember, it's a pretty straight shot. I just have to walk down this sidewalk that seems to go on forever. In Las Vegas, there's a lot of walls. If it was 4 feet taller, it would be as tall as the wall Trump wants to build, bordering Mexico and the US. They are literally about 6 feet tall and made of those cinder blocks, ugly and grey. Graffiti nowadays, and some back then too. Picture a straight mile-long road with 4 lanes, 2 going each direction. 2 grey walls on either side of the road that only open up every quarter mile or so for the entrance to a neighborhood. It's at least 100 degrees Fahrenheit, probably closer to 110 or 115. Middle of summer, it's hot. I'm wearing a white tank top and a black and white polka dot knees length 50s style skirt. I remember it like it was yesterday. Cell phones had just started to take off. It was about 2003. My parents wouldn't let me have a cell phone, so I didn't have one. I didn't even wear a purse. I had no place to hide anything, which was pretty dumb, seeing as how I'm a young, thin girl all alone in Las Vegas. Anyone could tell I had no means to protect myself, other than one idiot. A man in a white car drives up slowly behind me and rolls down his tinted windows. I remember the car being hard to see in because it was smoky and dark in there. He asks me to get in the car. I tell him no. He tells me he just wants to give me a ride, but I decline, as rude as I can sound. After a couple more tries, I lie and tell him that I'm going to call the police with my phone. He doesn't let up at first. I tell him to leave me the fuck alone. Idiot. He fell for the bluff and drove away. I was nervous after that because it would be a while until I got to Target, and I realized my stupidity at that time. Not too long after, another car drives up and asks me if I need a ride. I felt like the world had it out for me. It was 2 men this time, just my luck. I'm even less patient this time and tell them to fuck off. I'm closer now to an opening in the wall, but it's still about a 5-minute walk. The car drives off, and I watch the car drive quickly up the street and make a U-turn. I bolt. I sprint as fast as I can to that opening in the wall and make it in a couple minutes. I turn on my heel as soon as I reach the opening and run into the nearest backyard and look out behind a bush or some shit. There's a median in between the entrance and exit of the neighborhood I ran into. I soon see the same car slowly drive into the neighborhood. I'm freaking out and deciding if I should knock on this person's door and beg for help or not. I'm too shy to do it, and what if they aren't home? I wait until the car is blocked by another car going out. I'm not sure what to do, but soon I see both cars leave. I wait about 5 minutes or 10 minutes. He didn't come back. Crisis averted. I decide to book it. I warily take off, keeping my eyes peeled. I'm looking for 2 separate cars, both with potential kidnappers in them now. This walk was a bad idea. I'm trying to make it to Target as fast as I can now because I don't want to risk any possible sightings with these 2 separate creepy cars. After a while, I calm down a little. My mistake. Not that I could have prevented this or anything, but still. I was mentally and physically exhausted now, and I shouldn't have let my guard down. I'm about a quarter mile from the Target shopping center area now. No more openings in cinder block wall now. The next opening is actually the end of the wall because it's going to open into the large shopping center. I'll explain the layout a little, just enough to picture it. There's the end of the wall and about 50 yards of sidewalk until the entrance of the parking lot. Of course, I can just cut through the parking lot when I get there. There's a completely empty square glass building where a clothing store had just gone out of business right by the entrance. The only parts you can't see through the entire building was the support structure on the corners and halfway through each glass wall. It wasn't too large of a store. My game plan was just to turn into the parking lot as soon as the wall ended and walk at a diagonal line directly to the target entrance. Then I was home free. So as I'm walking, I remind you that I'm about a quarter mile until the parking lot. I can see it up in the distance. I'm focused on the goal to get the fuck in that building now. It's damn hot outside, and I didn't even have water. Unexpectedly, an old dirty green truck rolls up next to me. Oh no, not again. I can't believe it. For heaven's sake, this is the third time today. 3 guys in their 20s this time. They seem a little tipsy or something. Again, they try to offer me a ride, and again I tell them to go away, as I'm just going to Target and I'm almost there. So they drive off, thank goodness. I breathe a sigh of relief and continue my walk. But then, there, in the near distance, I see the green truck. They had parked now, facing at a diagonal directly at me. Picture an empty square parking lot where a car is parked in the bottom right corner facing the point of the corner pointed at me. They were trying to block me from cutting through the parking lot. They tried to talk me into their car. As I approached, I cussed them out. Then, by the luck of the gods, they pulled out and drove to the entrance of the parking lot, 50-ish yards away. I was worried they would circle back around like the other car did. So I ran to the empty glass building. Of course, I was sitting right next to the entrance as I did. So as a car passed in front of the truck, while they sat idle at the entrance exit, I ducked behind one of the supports on the building. I could see them looking for me. I have no idea why they didn't get out of the truck. As they inched forward, they surely thought there was no way I could hide in plain sight. I felt like I was playing paintball and hiding from the enemy. I quickly moved to the corner support farthest away from them. They kept idling. When they finally turned out of the parking lot, I hid on the other side of the support until they left. I assumed they would come back, so instead of cutting across the empty parking lot, I ran as fast as I can to the stores on the right of Target, and walked along all of them on the sidewalk, where I would be able to hide in case I was stopped again, or at least have help. Without incident, I got to Target. The smell of fresh buttered popcorn and the cold air conditioning was a very welcome thing. I had made it. Becky must have been taking her time because, after all of my hiding and running, she still wasn't inside at the entrance, where we planned to meet. I went into the bathroom and cried. I threw cold water on my face and tried to cool down, drinking from the water fountain. I didn't have any money for an actual drink or any of that popcorn, but I couldn't have eaten something that dry anyways, I was parched. After a short while, Becky met me at the entrance, and she freshened up in the bathroom. I was completely irked. She didn't even notice anything was off with me at all. She was so caught up in looking at herself in the mirror and smiling, that I had to try to even get her attention to talk to her. The conversation was less fulfilling than I had thought it would be. The first thing she said was, "Lucky. You were so hot that you tried to get picked up by 3 different cars. I didn't get any. All I got was honks." What on earth was wrong with her? I know as pretty teenage girls who crave attention, and kind honks that we got. It may have seemed like paparazzi to a famous person. But being stalked and almost kidnapped is not the same. I have never liked getting honked at since then. I was so naive. I thought honks were just a form of a compliment. I wanted to be attractive, of course. But now that I'm older, I feel stupid looking back. Is this what all girls do, I wondered. As a preteen, another friend and I would count how many honks we got too. We didn't think anything of it either. What idiots we were. As anticlimactic as it was, it took the whole walk back home with her to calm down. Nothing else happened now that it was the 2 of us, I supposed. But I never did tell my mom what happened, or my stepdad. I wanted to forget it. I wanted to be an adult, and if I told them, I wouldn't even be allowed to walk anywhere again. Not even right outside the apartment complex to Little Caesars. My advice, teenagers, be careful. Take your phone and a purse. so that you can hide some kind of weapon, never go alone, and don't rush to grow up. I certainly didn't feel like an adult after that. Parents, don't trust anyone with your kids. My kids are 11, 8, and 2. Yes, I got pregnant at 17. Luckily, I married that high school sweetheart, and we are still married today. But the point is, I don't let my kids do much alone. I'll wait in the car if my oldest wants to go into the gas station and buy me a soda quickly. But I won't even let them go to the park alone. I trust them, but I don't trust strangers. 3. A little background. I am half Latina, Anglo-Native American mix. My dad's from Nicaragua, who, despite my lineage, looks white. I was the youngest of 4. My half-siblings, twin brother and sister, and our middle sister, were from my mother's previous marriage to a wonderful man from Mississippi, who, by the way, was black, and were 14 and 15 years older than me, respectively. My siblings were okay people, but never really had time for me, as I was so much younger. I was somewhat small for my age, about 70 pounds, and with my green eyes and red blonde hair. Mom was Cherokee and Scottish. I didn't, at first glance, look like my siblings at all. I was a bit of a tomboy, preferred pants to dresses, hated dolls with a passion, loved books and drawing, and had no fear of snakes, lizards, or any of the other things girls were supposed to be afraid of. Because of all this, I was considered weird by my classmates. This will become relevant later, so please bear with me. My story takes place in 1980, in San Francisco, and happened over the course of 2 months. When I was 10 years old and going to public school, 2 students joined my class about 3 months before summer break. The first was a beautiful half-Indian, as in from India, who was very sweet, shy, and spoke halting English. I don't remember her name. The second girl was named Mia. Mia was large, black, with small dark eyes, lovely skin, and liked to use Vaseline on her hair, which she wore in multiple little braided puffs, with little hair clips on the ends. She was also 1 year older, 11, than the rest of the class. She also weighed around 110 to 120 pounds. After both girls were introduced by the teacher, a really nice woman, they were given their seating assignments. Mia was assigned the desk next to mine. Since I was a friendly, if quiet child and thought it would make her transition into a new school easier, I decided to befriend her. I said hi and told her my name. She acted real nice to me and seemed eager for us to be friends, so I at lunchtime showed her around the school, showing her the best places to sit in the cafeteria, my favorite places to sit in the yard, etc. I had thought I'd made a good friend and was, for a short time, really happy. It took only 2 weeks for me to discover that I was very, very wrong. Without any warning, Mia went from really nice to fucking psycho. She started taking money from me. She would take my lunch, even if she didn't want it, and any candy I had, going so far as to go through my bag to make sure I wasn't hiding anything. She ripped pages out of my books, ripped up my drawings, and generally made it her mission in life to terrorize me and destroy anything I valued. She was also physically abusive. She would punch me in the stomach, kidneys, and occasionally my face. She'd rip out my hair and try to make me eat it. Sometimes she would pinch me really hard in class until I bled. That bitch was truly evil. She also had a gang of 4 other girls, who she would sometimes use to herd and corral me somewhere isolated, and act as lookouts, and as cheerleaders, as she beat me up. She liked to ask me where I would like to be punched. She liked to hide in doorways and jump out and scare me, always with this huge grin on her face at seeing my fear. Once she even brought a small knife to school, and while I was alone at the top of a stairway, she cut me on my hand and pushed me down the stairs. I managed to grab the banister just in time. When I turned around, my finger bleeding from the knife cut, I saw she was standing at the top of the stairs, a look of great disappointment on her round face. But one of her favorite things to do was, after beating me up, she would escort me to the nurse and watch as the nurse treated my injuries. A small, weird smile playing on her lips, and her eyes almost fever bright as she watched me get bandaged up. And the look in her eyes filled me with absolute terror, because I knew what that look meant. That sick bitch fucking enjoyed all the damage she'd done to me. She was clearly getting off on it. Yeah, she was a sadist. Her and her fucked little crew would tell me that I would get them money, clothes, jewelry, and even new sneakers. They even gave me sizes and colors. They told me I'd better get all that stuff for them by next week, as if I could, and do it or else. I was freaked, terrified, and confused. Here was someone I'd went out of my way to be nice to, who I'd done nothing to, and who, for no reason I could think of, was torturing me. I kept asking her why she was doing this to me, hurting me for no reason. Her answer both confused and frightened me. She said that she was doing it because I deserved it, that because I was a white bitch, and therefore, in her opinion, deserved to be hurt because white people had hurt black people a long time ago. So because I was white, I had to be punished. I knew history. Duh. I read all the time, but didn't understand what my skin color had to do with her viciousness. I had been brought up to believe everyone was the same, no matter what they looked like. I still believe this to this day. And to like or hate them based on their actions and attitudes. Hell, my family pictures look like a UN meeting. No, looking back now, I don't believe she cared about my race. She was just some sick bitch who got off on torturing me. She then told me in a venom hiss that if I ever told on her, that she would kill me. She then smiled. I stood there frozen and believed her. The look in her eyes was batshit crazy. I lived every school day in terror of her. I would beg my teacher to let me leave early, but was afraid to tell her why, or stay in the classroom during recess and lunch. Once I even hid under a bus between the wheels as it slowly drove away to get away from her and her gang. I preferred getting run over by a school bus to being at her mercy. I knew I had done nothing to deserve this. I had trouble eating, couldn't sleep, and had panic attacks when I had to go to school. And I was certain that she was going to eventually kill me if I didn't do something. I told my parents, who did notice my behavior about Mia, but didn't tell them everything. I think it was because I was scared, but luckily not too scared to tell, and they talked to the principal. That's when the shit went bad. Before this, Mia was very careful to hide what she was doing from the staff. But after my parents talked to the principal, who didn't do anything, she lost her shit. It happened on a Monday. We had a substitute teacher. She was a white 20-something with perfect hair and makeup, long skirt and puffy blouse. She was also one stupid bitch. She basically ignored us, choosing instead to sit at the desk with a book or magazine, I can't remember which, and made it clear that she didn't want to be bothered. This is when it happened. Mia's gang of girls, who unfortunately were all in our class, suddenly surrounded me, grabbing my arms and legs. I was too surprised to struggle at first, so by the time I realized what was happening, they had me. Mia came up to me. She didn't say anything, only smiled cruelly. She reached into her bag and pulled out about 20 pencils and put them on my table. They were all sharpened to very narrow points. Grabbing my hair, she punched me in the nose twice in quick succession. She smiled as blood ran down my face from the punches. Then she picked up one of the pencils. Then, while still holding my hair, she pulled my head forward and tried to jam the sharpened end of the pencil into the base of my neck, angling it upwards, trying to get under the base of my skull. It hurt, and I yelled in pain, but the pencil broke. Mia threw that pencil away and grabbed another one as I struggled to escape. She managed to stab me in the back of my neck with at least 3 more pencils before I was able to break away from the girls holding me down. During all this, no one helped me or said a word. The fuckers. Maybe they'd all been afraid of Mariah and her gang, but I don't believe that. I think most of them just didn't give a shit. Since I was so weird, I didn't matter to them. No one would meet my eyes and, crying, obviously bleeding, went to the teacher for help. I begged her for help. This is the day I lost almost all faith in teachers, especially substitutes. Without really looking away from whatever she was reading, she told me in a cold, irritated voice, "Go back to my seat or she'd call the principal." This is the first time I'd ever yelled or cursed at a teacher. When I yelled, "Call the fucking principal, bitch!" the woman's jaw dropped, so did the entire classes. I suspect, but was too afraid to look behind me. But before she could give any kind of reply, the classroom's door opened and Miss Lupe, the school's vice principal, and counselor came in. She had heard me crying and pleading with the teacher as they walked by, and came in to investigate. She took one look at me, grabbed my hand and took me out of class. I was taken to the nurse who cleaned me up. My nose wasn't broken, thank goodness. And my neck, though bleeding, wasn't too bad either. My parents were called, and got there so quickly. I'm certain they broke every speeding law there was. My parents took one look at me and started yelling at the principal, who'd just shown up in the nurse's office, for letting this shit get so far, when she knew there was a problem. Boy, they were pissed. They pulled me out of school for a week and a half. I stayed at home. On the 11th day, I went with my parents to my school. I knew I had to go back. My parents had told me what to expect, but I was really scared. We went to the principal's office. There were people in her office, Mia looking sullen, two of her crew sitting there, looking guilty as hell, and not meeting my eyes, and a huge black woman in a black dress, pillbox hat, patent leather purse and shoes, and a Bible the size of a history book, with a rosary between the pages. There were deep indentations in the shape of big fingers in the leather of that Bible, and had a big bend on the upper outer edge. She looked like a supersized version of Mia. I figured this was Mia's mom. We sat down, me certain Mia was going to run from her side of the room and attack me. The principal began the meeting by talking about why we were all here. Really? And began asking me lots of questions about what had been happening to me. She would then ask my tormentors to explain. Unsurprisingly, the other two girls lied about all of it, saying none of it was true and that I was lying. But it was clear to everyone they were full of shit, even the principal. They never once looked up. Mia, on the other hand, only made one attempt at lying. When confronted with my now proven accusations, she puffed her chest out and gave attitude to the principal. At this, her mother stood up and glared down at her daughter and said, "What was that you said?" Mia immediately looked afraid, no terrified, and immediately dropped her head and sat back, hunching in on herself. The woman then turned to me and my parents. Damn, she was huge to my 10-year-old self, and very scary to me, and apologized for her daughter's sinful ways. Me and my parents kept quiet. My mom and dad were not the kind of people who scared easily, but I noticed they were looking at her like she was something dangerous. The woman sat back down and turned her eyes to her daughter, who cringed in her seat. It was decided, for my safety, that I would change schools. I spent my last month at an elementary school surrounded by strangers and very relieved to be there. Mia's crew were all suspended for 2 weeks, and Mia was held back a year. Oh, and that bitch substitute teacher? She got fired and never taught children again. Yay. I later found out that there were 2 other victims. The pretty Indian girl. They tried to cut the ruby bindi out of her forehead with a razor. And a kindergartner I didn't know. Also, the reason Mia came to my school was because she'd been kicked out of 2 other schools for bullying. Big surprise. I became more cautious of people after this, and had major trust issues. I kept people at arm's length for a long time, before I let any of them be my friend. I realized years later that Mia was an abused child, definitely at the hands of her mother and her Bible. However, that doesn't excuse what she did to me and to others. I can't forgive her for what she did to me, took from me. Mia, I hope you got the help you needed, and if not, I sincerely hope you never ever reproduced. And bitch substitute teacher, fuck you. 4. Hi, I'm 21 years old and live in New Jersey. I should also mention I'm a mother of 2 twin girls. I'm from a stuck-up kind of family, so when I found out I was pregnant, my family kind of just shunned me since I was 17 when I had them, and that was unacceptable. Which is fine by me because, how I see it, I'm better off. I had to quit college after I had them, which sucked, but with no support from my family, there was no way I could do it. I should also add, their father didn't leave me. He was in the military, so obviously he couldn't help a lot. Anyway, my daughters are identical and mixed. I'm white. My now husband is black. Their names are Nadia and Adriana. I was 19 when this story took place, and the twins were about 3. It was either a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon, because those were the only days I had off work, and had time to do grocery shopping. I had no one to babysit the girls, so I hired babysitters while I was at work, but that got expensive, so when I could have them with me, I did. Okay, so I needed to get food for the house, so I pulled out the girls' 2-seat stroller and walked to the Walmart 3 or 4 blocks away. When we got there and approached the door, I noticed a disheveled-looking woman sitting on the floor leaning against the outside wall. Beside her, she had sat a round tin can. I figured she was trying to collect money in. I thought she was probably homeless, which wasn't too uncommon in my area. As I was passing her, I flashed her a kind smile and continued on. I picked a few things here and there, and had squatted down to look at the price of something, when I just happened to look to my left, and saw the woman just standing at the end of the aisle staring. She scurried off after she noticed I'd seen her. I shook it off, and pushed my daughters down the aisle in the opposite direction. A while later, I was in line for the self-checkout, and the twins were getting restless. I told them that if I let them out, they had to stay right by me. They agreed and climbed out. I watched them like a hawk to make sure they didn't wander off or bother someone. But when it came time to pay, I had to focus on swiping my card and typing in my PIN. After paying, I looked over and saw them a ways away, sitting on a bench right near the coolers they kept the ice in. I didn't want to sound like a crazy person screaming for them over everyone, so I just set the bags in the basket thing attached to the stroller and tried to squeeze past everyone to get to them. This stroller wasn't the nice ones with 2 seats, one in front, one in back. It was a big, wide, 3-wheeled one where the seats were side by side. And if you've ever had one of those, you know how hard it is to maneuver. So after weaving in and out of a mass of people, I looked up just in time to see the homeless woman from before walk up in front of my daughters. I thought that was odd that she was still around and quickened my pace over there. Reaching the twins, I told them to climb back in, and after they did, I started walking away towards the doors, but the woman followed. "Are they twins?" she asked, and I raised an eyebrow at her because they obviously were. But not wanting to be rude, I nodded and quickened my pace through the parking lot. This woman stayed at my side. "What are their names?" I was not answering that, and she didn't seem to notice how uncomfortable I was becoming. "They're so cute," she said, and I mumbled a thank you. By that time, I was out of the parking lot and had to cross the street to the other one that would lead to my house. The lady fell back for a moment, and I told myself if she crossed with us, I would say something to her. When it was safe to cross, I walked quickly across and looked back to see the woman lightly jogging after us. I stopped and turned around to face this woman just as she came up on the sidewalk. "What do you want? I don't have any cash," I said, and she just smiled. "I don't want your money. I want to play with them," she said. I was so shocked I didn't know what to say. Her voice sounded so normal, like being a complete stranger and wanting to play with 3-year-old girls was completely okay. When I found my voice, I told her to stop following us and I started pushing my daughters again. After walking a few feet, I looked back to see her just standing there with this pissed off look on her face. Now would be a good time to mention what she looks like. She has dark greasy hair that she has tucked up in her dirty winter hat. It wasn't winter then, so why she was wearing that beats me. She also wore baggy blue jeans and a long t-shirt that, from the looks of it, should have been thrown out ages ago. Seeing her reaction scared me a little, and I picked up the pace. Now the street curved once, and then it was a straight shot to my apartment. So after I turned the corner, I full-on started running. I don't know why this woman was acting so weird, but my motherly instincts kicked in, and I booked it. The twins were squealing with joy at our sudden increase in speed, and I kept throwing nervous looks over my shoulder to see if the woman had followed. She hadn't, and I slowed down since we were nearing home. We live in a duplex, the ones where two people live on either side. It was all one story because there were two more people living above us side to side. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, we live on the left side, so when you enter the front door, there's a staircase directly in front of you, and on either side a door leading into someone's house. I told the girls to get out of the stroller and help carry in the groceries while I folded up the stroller to carry inside. Once inside, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders and went on with my day. Later that night, I heard a random knock at my door. I got up to see who it was, but no one was there. I shrugged it off and went to sleep. Fast forward 2 weeks later. It was either a Saturday or Sunday again, and I needed to do some more shopping. I pulled out the stroller and started towards Walmart again. I had completely forgotten about the woman, until I saw her sitting outside Walmart again with her tin can. I thought about turning around, but by then, she had already seen us and she started fucking waving like we were friends. I just ignored her and walked right in. This time she literally jumped to her feet and followed us in. At first I just ignored her and went on with shopping, but she gradually crept closer and closer, so I whipped around and started screaming at her. I wasn't scared of this psycho, I was just fed up. People around us looked in shock and a pair of teenagers started laughing. She looked sad and angry at the same time, and I just turned around and was about to start pushing my daughters again, who at this point were pretty scared. I hadn't walked 2 feet when I heard someone yell, "Watch out!" I turned just in time for that crazy bitch to hit me right between the eyes with her tin can. It hurt, and I went down, hitting my temple on a bottom shelf. She took that moment to start pushing the stroller away from me at a running pace. One of the teenagers ran after her, and the other checked on me while dialing 911. I was, honestly, in so much pain, and it hurt even more to move, but I was only worried about my daughters. The teenager told me not to move and that her boyfriend would get my kids. I blacked out a little bit after that. When I came to again, probably 10 minutes later, the 2 teenagers were trying to calm down my daughters who were crying. Beside me, 2 paramedics shone flashlights in my eyes and all that stuff. I tried to sit up, and they told me not to and that everything would be okay. I ended up passing out again. This time when I woke up, I was in the hospital. My mom was in the room with me and filled me in on what happened. Apparently, the other teenager caught the woman right away, but she pulled a fucking pocket knife on him. Then she started screaming that she was gonna take the pretty black girls with her to heaven. The teenager was joined by other people in the store, who formed a kind of circle around her and the twins, so she couldn't run off. She stood there threatening everyone around her, until the cops showed up, along with the ambulance for me. The police officers had to tase her, and the teenager wheeled my daughters back over to where I was getting help. My mom had taken the twins back to her house where my dad was watching them, then came to see me. So yeah, I don't know what happened to that woman, and I honestly don't care, as long as I don't ever see her ass again. I don't know if it was her at my door, but if it was, That's pretty creepy by itself because I didn't see her when I went inside. But for her to know exactly what apartment was mine, she must have been following us. My heart goes out to those two teenagers, wherever they are, because they were the first ones to react and help me. I just want to say that I've listened to these kind of stories before, and many of them seem so far-fetched. I can't even begin to put words to how real this story is, and how scared I was for my children. If you're a parent, you know that fear. I literally almost lost my daughters that day, and it still makes me cry when I think about it. In the end, believe what you want, but this was most definitely the scariest thing to ever happen to me. 5. It was the winter of 2016. I was selling life insurance at the time, and although some companies are legit and actually helpful, mine went after the poor and lower class people who could barely afford to pay their bills, let alone insurance. This ensured that my daily appointments were almost always in the very worst parts of town. In the brief time I did this job, I had appointments in homes where there were entire walls missing and covered with thin plastic sheeting. I met a man who was so obese he had not been off his couch in years. Once when I arrived a few minutes early for an appointment and sat out in my car to wait, I had a guy run up to my car from the alley and give me a funny look as he got to my driver's side window. We were both confused until another silver car pulled up behind me, just a moment later. The guy from the alley must have seen who he had been waiting for in that car, as he ran back to that car, and I got to watch my very first drug deal go down. So yeah, very nice neighborhoods. This particular night, I had been working for hours without a single sale. I was depressed and hungry. It was about 8 p.m. I passed a Popeye's chicken with a drive-through line around the building and a sign proclaiming a special on chicken. I can't recall exactly what it was, but it sounded like a good deal to me. And I was both broke and in the mood for some spicy fried chicken. I parked right in the front and walked in. The line inside was almost as bad as the one for the drive-through. But as I had an hour before my next appointment, I had time to wait, and plus eating in my car was cramped. As I approached the counter, I saw a man staring at me as he waited for his food. He was short, kind of dirty-looking, scruffy beard, long matted hair, drab military green overcoat. He looked like he could be homeless. His order arrived, he picked it up and sat down, breaking his stare. I ordered, got my food, and sat down to enjoy my meal. About halfway through, the guy who had been staring at me comes up to me and he just says, "Hey." "Hello?" "Hey man, there are some kids tagging that building over there." He points outside the window. "Okay. Aren't you going to do something about it?" No. Why would I do that?" "Aren't you a cop? Why don't you go do your fucking job, man?" At this point, I kind of laugh. I didn't believe what I was hearing. Then I looked down at what I was wearing. A dark navy blue button-up shirt, and black slacks, black shoes, black tie. Okay, maybe he is just confused. "No man, sorry, I'm just a guy in a blue shirt." Here is where things go from odd to surreal. "Nah man, you're a cop. I've seen you around. You've been following me for weeks." "I have? I'm sorry, but I think you have me confused with someone else. I've never seen you before. I don't even live around here." "Nah man, I seen you. You were there in Russia." "When I was there, did they send you?" "Dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have never been to Russia, and I have never seen you before in my life. I'm not a cop. I'm just a guy trying to eat my dinner." "Uh-huh. You're a cop. I'm gonna call my boys. We're gonna get to the bottom of this." With this, he turns and walks out into the night. What a weirdo, I think to myself. The guy sitting nearby me jokes. some people, or something like that. Yeah, I agree. I finish my dinner in about 5 more minutes, get a refill of sweet tea, and walk out of the front door to my car. I almost made it without incident. As I unlocked the door and put my bag in the seat, I hear from the corner of the building, "Hey, cop! Ever been to Russia?" It was the guy. He now had a large bag slung around his shoulders, which he reached into as he called out. His eyes were mad, his smile wide and crazy. I jumped into my car and turned the ignition before I was even fully inside. I jumped the curb rather than back out, and as I was barely 25 or 30 feet away, I heard the clear, distinct pop-pop of 2 gunshots. I did not look back to see what he had shot me with. I didn't care. I just had to get away, which I did. I closed my door and tried to wrap my mind around what had just happened. I pulled into a well-lit gas station a few miles away. There was no damage to my car, and I myself was safe. I didn't bother calling the police, as I had always heard that they don't even come to this particular neighborhood. Besides, I didn't really have that much info. Better off to just never go back there, which I have not, as that was my last night at that job. When I want Popeyes, I stick to my own neighborhood location. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Scary Subscriber Stories, episode 43. Okay, I had let's call it a discussion with some subscribers last week about my putting of paranormal stories in with the more, let's call them vanilla stories, although I don't think that's fair to say because they're certainly never boring. Now, I think the numbers speak for themselves, but I want people to enjoy the videos, so what I'm going to ask you guys to do is let me know in the comments whether or not you would like me to remove the paranormal stories from the True Subscriber Stories videos. The way I see it is, they're subscriber stories, they're mixed, and it's worked that way for a while. The view numbers are good, the like to dislike ratio is very strong, but I don't want to be blind to feedback, so please let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll take it on board and perhaps consider starting a separate paranormal subscriber series. But it will all depend on the feedback. I'll leave it in your hands. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.